Hello art beaters, Becky here, and I've got a brand new video for you today. Today I'm going to be showing you some knotting techniques with gemstone beads. Traditionally we do knotting between pearls to protect the beads, but you can also do that with your gemstones, and it can make a really beautiful style statement in your jewelry pieces as well. I'll be showing you how to knot the traditional way with tweezers, and I'll show you a few different tools that we have for knotting that can make your work faster or easier, especially if you have like pain in your hands. We're going to be getting into all of the details of knotting today. So come along and learn some knotting techniques for your gemstones.
Okay, so today we're going to be knotting between gemstone beads. Knotting is traditionally used between pearls to protect the bead, so it's also a really great technique for protecting your gemstone beads, especially if you have really precious ones that you don't want to scratch, or if they're softer gemstones. Really great option to knot between them. So I'm going to be showing you some of your knotting options. We have got several tools to help you with knotting, and each one has its different benefits, and maybe you're going to make this decision based on what you already have, or maybe if a tool makes it easier for you, that's okay. We have lots of options, and I'm going to be showing you them today. The straightforward method, the most traditional method, is just with tweezers. Knotting with tweezers is easy, it's fun, it's fast, and it's gets the job done. So you can knot with tweezers, and I'll show you how to do that. And we also have other really great, more in-depth videos for these knotting techniques as well. If you want to check those out on our YouTube channel, we have those available to you. Another great tool for knotting between pearls is the Beadalon knotting tool. This is a really great one that implements a yoke method for your cord, so that makes it really easy to knot. We also have the Beadalon tabletop knot-a-bead knotter. And this one is great because you can string all your beads ahead of time, and then use this little tool to knot your beads once you've got them all strung. I think this one is easier on your hands if maybe you have arthritis or hand pain. I think this one is going to save you there if that's a concern of yours. And it makes it go by really fast. If you don't want to worry about stringing your beads in between knotting, you can string them all ahead of time and then knot with this cool tool. We've also got the Easy Knotter, which is a tool that I have not used before, brand new to me, so this will be a fun one to learn about today with you. And this one will also help you knot your pearls and your gemstones. So let's take a look. So today I've got a couple different gemstone beads that I wanted to use. I've got some 8mm labradorite gemstones, which are really beautiful. They've got a really nice fire in them, and some 6mm Hubei turquoise rounds. Really pretty color on those. So those are really pretty right next to each other. So I think I'm going to alternate the 8mm and the 6mm rounds together between my knots. For my knots today as well, my cord that I'll be knotting with, I am using Griffin silk beading cord. I've got size number 7 here today. A note on sizes, you're just going to want to make sure that this cord fits through the stringing hole of the beads you're using. So if this size is smaller than your hole size, you're good to go. And do be aware that this cord has a needle already attached to it, so it's really easy to add your beads to your cord. Make sure it fits over that needle. Just test it on the needle, slide it onto the needle and onto the cord. Make sure it fits that way too. So this is the cord we will be using today. You can also use something like Toho Ameliat cord for knotting. This is a polyester cord, and it comes in a lot of fun colors like this variegated brown. This one is stiff enough where you can string your beads without having that needle attached. If you just don't even want to deal with having a needle on your beads, you could totally use this Toho Ameliat cord. It's stiff enough to use without a needle, but flexible enough to make nice knots in. So that's another option for your knotting cord. Another tip for the Ameliat cord, you can add just a little bit of an adhesive on that end to stiffen it up to make it even easier to get your beads on. Like some super glue would work just fine. So that's another little tip for the Ameliat cord. I've actually decided that I'm going to use the Toho Ameliat cord for my demonstration because I think it matches the bead colors a little better. So I've cut my length of cord, and I'm just going to stretch that cord with my hands, get any of the kinks out. Just stretching it. If you're wondering what length of cord to use, I would say go for the length that you want your finished piece to be and add at least half of that. So let's say you want to make like a 24-inch length necklace, I would cut 36 inches of cord. Now with the Griffin silk beading cord, I would just unspool that whole card of cord and start using it from the end of the cord. And you should have plenty for your project. The reason I say that is because there's a needle attached to that cord. When you cut your work off of the cord, your needle will still be attached to the other end. So if you start working on the bottom of the cord where the needle isn't attached, you'll have it'll be easier to use that extra cord again because the needle will still be attached. So I'm just going to start by just making a knot at the end of my cord. I'll leave a little bit of a tail, but I'm just going to start by doing that. And then I will use one of these pretty turquoise beads, and I'm going to add it to my cord until it's right next to that first knot I made. And I like to really pull to make sure that knot is right in the place where I want it to be. So I'm going to start by using the Tweezers method to show you how to do some knotting. And what you're going to do is I've got these two fingers up here. I've wrapped my cord around those two fingers, brought it back up, and then I'm going to come between those two, that cord in the back there to make my knot. Not going to pull yet. You're going to grab your tweezers, and what you're going to do is you're going to come under that second cord and then grab that first cord real close to the bead there. Then you're going to pull, and you can see that this first one is going to be a little squirrely. So get that loop nice and close to the bead and the tweezers, pull. So look at that, you can see that the knot, because the tweezers is keeping everything in place, that knot is nice and close to the bead. So what you're going to do here to tighten it up even more is you're going to slide your tweezers out of that knot, but then bring them on top of the knot and push the knot down even closer to the bead. Beautiful. After I've done that, the tweezers have done the majority of the work. I like to just use my fingers too and kind of pull and make sure that that knot is good and in place. And then you're ready to add your next bead and your next knot. So I'm going to add a labradorite bead next. If I can find the stringing hole, there it is. Labradorite bead next, slide it down to the knot you just made. Ooh, those look nice together. And then repeat the process. So bring that cord over and around the two fingers, back around to the back, slip it under that cord that's already there in the back to form the knot. Grab your tweezers, bring it under that first cord, and then grab that next cord right above your bead and pull the knot close to the bead, slip your tweezers out, and then push the knot down even further with your tweezers. So that's the tweezers method. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, but we have a couple other options for you too. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to knot with the Beadalon Knotter tool. And this one is, you're going to want to get the positioning of your beads right on this one. It's a really easy tool to use, but you got to learn how to get that knot started in the correct way. So I'm just adding my next bead, bringing it down to the knot I've already made. Now, this is where I messed up the first time. I thought, oh, you just make a little overhand knot and then stick this yoke through and pull, but it never worked for me. So you've got to get your beads positioned in your hands beads positioned correctly. So what you're going to do is you're going to bring those beads to the top of your 2 fingers. So you want your beads at the top of your 2 fingers, and then you wrap them around like this. Then you have to flip your 2 fingers. Flip your 2 fingers and then bring those beads through the loop that you've created. And this is what makes the magic work. And then I'm taking my knotter tool, and you see that long pointy thing? That's the little awl. You bring that through the loop you've created, and then you pull. You pull until the loop that you've created is really close to the bead. So this is what it's going to tell you that you've done it right. When I was doing it incorrectly, when I pulled, the beads were still very far away from the knot forming. So if that happens, you know you need to start over. So you've got those beads nice and close to the knot. You're already starting to form. You're going to bring that cord through the yoke on the tool. And then you just push up on this little guy, and it makes the knot really close to the beads. So that's another great little tool for making knots. And we have more videos on how to use that tool as well. For the Beadalon Knotter tool, we also have the Beadalon Tin Cup Knotter tool. It works the same way as the Beadalon Knotter, but it has this little spacer thing on it, so you can space out your knots to make a floating pearl necklace. And we have a video with Wyatt White from Beadalon for how to do that, so check my links in the video description for that video. Now I'm going to show you how to use the Easy Knotter to make knots between your beads. And this is another tool. You can see it has measurements here. You can use it to make close knots between each bead, or you can use it to make that tin cup floating pearl, floating bead necklace type look by using these measurements on the tool. So all you're going to do for this is make a loop again, and you're going to bring the beads through the loop like you did for the Beadalon Knotter. And before you make that loop tight, you're going to bring your loop onto this little peg here on the Easy Knotter tool, and then pull to get your beads super close to that knot. And then what you're going to do now is grab your next bead in your sequence and add it onto the cord. And this is what's going to help keep that knot close to your previous bead. So I'm just kind of pulling or pushing on both beads as I'm lifting this up off of this spoke here, and that's what keeps the knot nice and close. There you go. And I double knotted here because this stringing hole was a little bit bigger, so I've got 2 knots here. That's something to keep in mind too. How big do you want your knots? You can double knot to make it a little more stand out a little more in your designs. So that's a pretty easy tool to use as well for knotting. Now I'm going to show you how to knot with the Beadalon knot-a-bead tool. This is a tabletop tool. It just sits right on your work surface. And what I like about this technique is you can pre-string all of your beads if you don't want to deal with stringing them all while knotting. So I've strung a bunch of beads here on my cord. One note for that, so this is the working end of my cord. I just put a little knot on the other end of my cord so my beads don't fall off as I'm working. So what you're going to do here is you're going to slide the next bead up in your strand up to the last knot created, and then you're going to bring these beads to the back of this little yoke here. Then what you're going to do is make an overhand knot with your cords. So you got to get the beads through that loop. Then bring these back to the back of the yoke. Pull, bring that cord through this yoke here, and keep tension on that cord. So keep pulling as you use this little lever to release the awl. Slide another bead up close to the knot, bring it behind the awl. Make an overhand knot. Make sure you get all your beads through that knot. Bring all the beads back down behind the awl. Make sure your bead doesn't get caught in the knot. Pull, bring the cord through the yoke. Pull and keep that tension close to the bead. And then slide. Keep your tension as you pull that yoke out of there, that awl out of there. Slide your next bead up. Bring it to the back of the awl. Make an overhand knot in the front of the awl. And get all those beads through. Bring the beads to the back of the awl. Pull. And make sure you pull until the beads are up tight next to that yoke. Keep tension on there as you slide out. So this one is definitely the fastest, I think, because you can pre-string your beads and then just keep going with that as you knot them. So that one is a really fast, easy method, especially if you have arthritis or something where your hand grip isn't as strong. That's a good one to knot your beads fastly and with less hand pressure. So that's a really good tool for something like that. Yeah, so that's the knotting methods and tools that you can use. I think my favorite is just tweezers. I always fall back on this one. This one is going to give you, I think, the most control over knots, how your knots are going to come out. But this one is going to be the easiest on your hands. And the other tools make it really fast as well. And if you're making floating pearls, I would recommend the Easy Knotter or the Beadalon Tin Cup Knotter because you can really keep those distances between your knotted beads nice and consistent. So after you've knotted all your beads on your cord, you might be asking, well, how do I finish a knotted piece? How do I add a clasp or add a link to connect it to other pieces? And you can use a couple different methods. I like to use bead tips. Bead tips are these little round closures, and they come like this. And you can see that they've got a little opening on the end, and that's for sliding over the last knot in your pearl strand or gemstone strand. So for instance, if I wanted to finish this strand that I just was working on with a bead tip, I would slide my cord through that opening between those two little clamshell sides, and the knot would fit in there, or it would slide just above the knot. Then you would make another knot right inside this bead tip. So that's very important. Make sure when knotting that you leave a tail long enough to knot the inside the bead tip. I've got that in there, and I'm pulling down on the knot. There we go. So you can see I've got that second knot inside the bead tip. So we've got the knot that I slid the bead tip onto above, and then I made another knot for inside the bead tip. And you do just, I would add some adhesive here too, some glue, and then you would just close this bead tip around the knot that you just created with your fingers. And then you can trim this too. And with glue, it'll be extra secure. And then it has this little hook at the top that you can use to attach a clasp, maybe a closed jump ring, whatever. And then you would just simply loop this down to make it a secure little closure. There's also bead tips available that have a closed loop attached. That's what was used here. This is a bead tip with a closed loop that you don't have to hook down. You would simply just use a jump ring to add your clasp. So bead tips are a really great way to finish your knotted jewelry. Another alternative to finishing your knotted projects to bead tips is using French wire. This is a very fine coiled wire. You can see the tiny little coils here. That is going to protect the ends of your threads when adding a clasp. So I can show you how to use that here now. So you can use your cutters to cut your French wire to size. You only need a little bit just to protect the loop of thread that you'll be making for the end of your bracelet. So I'm just going to cut this in half. And I was pulling the French wire apart earlier to show you how the wire coils. You don't really want to do that when you're using it, because at some point when you're stretching it, it will stay stretched, and that's not what you want. So don't do that. So I've got a little piece cut here. This is best used with Griffin silk cord with the needle that's already attached, because it is a very fine hollow tube made from these coils. The needle makes it easier to get your cord through that tube of the French wire. This method too, you're going to want to make sure that your cord can pass through the beads twice. So what you would do for this is you would add your last bead before finishing your project. You add your last bead you want to add. So once you've added your last bead to your cord, you would add your little length of French wire. Now, again, I want to stress, make sure that the French wire fits over the needle and the eye of the needle as well. The needles on the Griffin silk cord are pretty close to the size of the cord, but the eye is a little bit bigger where the cord is attached to the needle. If it's too tight of a fit, this could happen where the wire kind of expands because the thread is too big. So just make sure that the inside diameter of your French wire fits your cord. And so then you've got your French wire and your last bead attached. You're going to bring that down to the rest of your knotted design. Now, if your clasp already has a jump ring attached, or you're attaching a jump ring, or you're just attaching straight to the loop of your clasp, you're going to want to slide your clasp or your jump ring over the French wire as well, and then come back down through that last bead you added. Once you've gone back down through that last bead added and pulled tight, it's going to make this nice little loop with your French wire. And that loop is going to keep your thread safe from any like fraying or breakage that might happen when rubbing against a jump ring or a clasp. So that's going to protect your jewelry project and make it easy to add a clasp or jump ring. So you've got this extra thread coming through. So what you would do is just knot that thread between your last bead and the bead before it in your project. So super easy and super fun way to finish your knotting projects. I want to say that if you need more help with bead tips or French wire, we do have tutorials on our website for how to use those products. And we have lots of great options for you to shop in different finishes and styles to match your projects too. And that's all available to you at artbeads.com. I've got links in the video description.
Thanks so much, guys, for watching. I hope you were inspired. I hope you learned something new today. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see next too. Love hearing your suggestions. Love hearing what's helpful for you guys in your beading journey. We are beaders helping beaders here, so please leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed. And as always, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you're the first to know when videos like this one are out. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.